What's going on, everyone? So reports have came out that the Miami Heat are considering waiving point guard Kyle Lowry if unable to find a trade in free agency. Now, trading Kyle Lowry might not be crazy far-fetched. I see a lot of people that are like, who would want Kyle Lowry's contract? He's a 29, almost $30 million expiring contract. That's going to have a lot of value as we move throughout this offseason and even come the trade deadline, right? Because you're going to have teams, because of the new CBA, that are just going to want to get off of contracts. And we've seen it already. We've seen guys go for a bag of peanuts, literally. Like teams just here, take Bradley Beal's contract. Let's just get off of it, right? Kristaps Porzingis here, take the contract. Like all of those things we're seeing the CBA have its handprint on all of that. So a team could very well see Kyle Lowry and go, man, that's a $30 million expiring contract that we could take on, write it out for the year, or waive him and let him go to a contender or whatever, and then we cleared off our salary. So trading Kyle Lowry could be a possibility, but what makes sense for the Miami Heat, right? Like to take on a bunch of long-term salary, unless it's somebody that they believe is really going to make an impact, or a couple players that they believe is really going to make an impact, they're just not going to do that, right? Now, in a perfect world, you can use Kyle Lowry's contract to go get Damian Lillard, right? That's the conversation. Damian Lillard going to the Miami Heat. You're going to have to give up more than Kyle Lowry, but Kyle Lowry would very likely be the contract filler that would go to the Portland Trail Blazers, so that way they could match salaries to go get Damian Lillard. But again, Portland wants to keep Dame. Dame doesn't really seem like he's in a rush or a hurry to go and demand a trade. So Miami very well could be stuck with Kyle Lowry, and then at that point, very likely would waive him. Now, if they decide to waive him, I actually think that he would be a solid fit in a backup point guard role, right? Because here's the thing. The Lakers, they're going to lose, very likely, Dennis Schroeder. Now, obviously, Kyle Lowry isn't the guy he once was, right? He's not the player he once was by any stretch of the imagination, but he's still a serviceable, veteran, experienced style point guard. And the Lakers do have a young buck in Shafino, right? That they want to kind of bring in to the mold, right? So you could go get Kyle Lowry. At that point, it would be a vet minimum contract. Get Kyle Lowry at a vet minimum, bring him in as just a quality vet that has experience, that's won an NBA championship, that's hit big shots, that's made big plays. He actually was really good for the Heat in the playoffs this past season. It's just, can he stay healthy, and how many games is he going to play, and can he continue to do that? His production and everything has fallen off of a cliff compared to the guy that he once was. But still, I do think him as like a veteran point guard who kind of splits minutes with Shafino and let's say D'Lo or whomever, right? Whatever ends up happening. Like, I wouldn't want Kyle Lowry to come in and be our starting point guard, but I do think him as like our second or third point guard on the roster, I think would help a lot, right? And he would be good in like clutch moments, right? Like if you have to, the game's getting tight, would you trust Kyle Lowry or would you trust Shafino? Right? Like, you would trust Kyle Lowry because he's a guy that's been in those high pressure moments, that's hit big shots, it's not afraid of the moment. I do think that there's value in that. Plus, you could even go get Kyle Lowry on a vet minimum, and maybe you go and trade for DeMar DeRozan, right? DeMar DeRozan might very well be the most realistic third star that the Lakers could get. It might also give, if the Lakers got Kyle Lowry, it might even give the DeMar DeRozan a bit of an incentive to kind of push his way to the Lakers, because he gets to go to his hometown team, he gets to go to the team that he wants to play for, and he gets to play with his best friend Kyle Lowry. Could be a win-win. There were talks about the Lakers acquiring both of these guys, not too long ago, before the Heat acquired Kyle Lowry. Like, the Lakers were pursuing him. DeMar DeRozan himself said, like, hey, I thought I was going to Lakers. I thought it was done, right? And there was a lot of talk about these two being on the Lakers with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Again, Kyle Lowry, not the guy he once was, right? Like, if this was Toronto prime Kyle Lowry, then yeah, that's a home, right? That's a grand slam, especially at a vet minimum price. But I don't hate the idea of Kyle Lowry. Again, he's not a guy that you're bringing in to play heavy minutes or big minutes, right? He's already accepted a bench role in Miami. So he's not going to complain about that. He's not going to, cry about that. He still this year was playing, 30 plus minutes a game. I wouldn't want him doing that for the Lakers, right? I would want Kyle Lowry to come in, be a guy that plays 10, maybe 15 minutes a game, a guy that you can trust with the basketball, that isn't going to turn the ball over a bunch, that's going to take care of the ball. He averages 6 assists for 2 turnovers for his career. So as a guy that can get assists, get guys going, he's 11 point a game guy, which is fine. That's all you need from a backup role type player. He still can get after it. He's still tough. He's not afraid to sacrifice his body, die for balls, do the dirty work, do the hustle plays. Like, I'm all for that. Like, we could use a guy like that. I want a veteran center, and I want still a veteran point guard. Because we saw in the playoffs at times D'Angelo Russell just completely disappear. We saw even Dennis Schroeder completely disappear. And it would be nice to have a guy. That's why I wanted Chris Paul, right? Like, yeah, Chris Paul is a liability at times and just seems to disappear on the offensive side, but his IQ, his decision making, like all of those things. Like, how many times, even in the playoffs, did we see Dennis Schroeder in the game because D'Lo was terrible and literally unplayable, and Dennis Schroeder would make 2 or 3 straight turnovers, just making terrible decisions that almost cost us the game. There were games this season where it did cost us the game, right? I would rather have a guy like Kyle Lowry that he's not going to make those bonehead decisions. He's not going to turn the ball over down the stretch. He's like, if D'Lo doesn't have it tonight, you could go to Kyle Lowry and he can be a guy that's not going to make silly just errors that comes from lack of experience, right? I would rather prefer that. That's why I wanted Chris Paul in that bench role, because it gives you a guy that can still go get you 10 to 15 on any given night, but he would have a very limited role compared to the role he was playing. Same thing with Kyle Lowry. He could go and get you 10 to 15 a night, but he's going to have a very limited role compared to the role that he was playing. He's not going to be playing 30 plus minutes a night for the Lakers. He's going to be playing 10 to 15 minutes a night, because you're going to ride heavily on your young guys. You're going to ride heavily on D'Lo. Going to rely heavily on Shafino, hopefully, if he's ready and can actually make an impact, right? So you just have Kyle Lowry as that locker room guy on a vet minimum who has experience that you can plug and play at any moment if you need to. Game's tight. You need somebody that can execute a play seamlessly, right? Game's on the line, minute left. Throw in Kyle Lowry, because he's not going to turn the ball over. He's going to execute and run whatever you need him to. He's going to get after. He's going to play defense, and he's a guy that's not afraid of the moment, that can hit the shot if you need him to. Like, that's what the Lakers need. The Lakers need a guy like that. Need a guy that's not afraid of the moment. Like, even the Denver series, our biggest problem was closing games down the stretch. It was turning the ball over. It was poor shot selection. It was, not doing what is necessary to close out. And Denver did. The entire series was decided by 24 points total. Total. Not like they beat us a game, but no, they didn't win a game by double digits. Like, the Lakers were in every one of those games. All of those games came down to the stretch. And the Lakers were not able to execute and close out those games down the stretch. You had Dennis Schroeder, like I said, turning the ball over. You had, D'Lo, who basically just couldn't even be out on the court in those moments, right? And it was like, God, we could have used a Rajon Rondo in those moments, or Chris Paul in those moments, where it's like, got that veteran guy. He's not going to turn the ball over like Dennis Schroeder did. He's not going to be he's not going to disappear. He's still going to set the hard screen. He's still going to go after and dive for that loose ball. He's going to do the things that are necessary to try to squeeze out this win. He's a competitor. He's been in those moments. He fights. He's from Heat's culture. So he's coming from a place where he knows what is needed to win, right? This is a guy that has a world of experience. Like, we could have used somebody like that down the stretch. I'm not saying that getting Kyle Lowry would have been the difference between winning or losing that series. It's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that it could have helped. It may have swayed a game or two, which may have changed the outcome of that, right? The Lakers win a game or two and it's 2-2 rather than 4-0. all of a sudden, who knows? Maybe you force a game 7, and then game 7, maybe LeBron and AD have a heroic performance. Now you're in the NBA Finals. Who knows, right? It's all just speculation, but I do think that if the Lakers had just one more reliable guy, right? He didn't even necessarily need to go and drop 20 to 30 a game. Just a guy that could have been counted on and playable. Kyle Lowry was that. He was that for Miami. He had some big games, some big shots, some big moments, like regularly for Miami in this last playoff run. He was really good for them in this playoff run. Even if we just have him, like think of like when Rondo was on the Lakers, right? He sparingly played throughout the course of the regular season. He wasn't really that great, but he was big for the Lakers and a huge factor why the Lakers won the NBA championship that year, right? Like, I do think Kyle Lowry, to an extent, could be that. A guy that like you just play sparingly throughout the course of the regular season, and then you have him come in and be a bigger factor in the playoffs, right? Because when you get to the playoffs, are you really going to trust your rookie to play heavy minutes in a playoff series? Probably not, right? Unless he's just balling that well, right? But you can't really expect that for a rookie, so what other guards are out there? What other point guards are out there that make a lot of sense, especially on a vet minimum, right? Because you got to remember, all these other teams are going to be competing for these guys as well. If you can go and get Kyle Lowry, then that could also open the door for other guys, like I said, a DeMar DeRozan, whatever. I don't hate the idea, is my point. Like, if it doesn't, like, if he goes to, like, the Suns or something like that, like, I'm not going to be upset. I don't think he's that big of an impact guy, but I do think he's a guy that can be a locker room voice, a locker room presence, even in just like a Jared Dudley role, right? Like, I'm okay with that. Not everybody, like, he would be a vet minimum contract, literally a vet minimum contract. So you're not paying him, $10 million a year. You're paying him the bare minimum. And you're going to have a guy or two on your roster anyway that's getting the vet minimum, that's probably not going to play a bunch or anything like that. Why not get a guy like Kyle Lowry that at any moment can suit up and you can trust to be in that moment, right? Like a guy that is going to be a professional, going to help the young guys, is going to be a viable player. You put him in a big moment. He's not going to collapse even if he hasn't played the whole game. Okay, he's been here. He knows that. He understands it. It's a guy that LeBron would trust. Again, I don't hate it, but how do you feel? What are your thoughts? However they are, I'd love to hear them, so let me know down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you like the idea of Kyle Lowry on a vet minimum? Do you not? Do you think, stay away from him, go try to get somebody else? Do you think, like, well, if, nobody else is available, then sure, go get him? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it, so let me know down in the comments.